The first time we noticed it was when the house ate the flowers. It was a little bouquet of peonies that Aaron's stepmom had picked from her garden. We left them out in a vase overnight, and when we woke in the morning, they were gone. "I never brought you flowers," she told us. The kids didn't remember either. Only Aaron and I had any memory of the moment where she burst in the front door holding them, welcoming us to our new home. The house's appetite soon became obvious. Anything that could be consumed disappeared in rapid time. Meat from the butcher never lasted overnight in the fridge. Vegetables rotted in a matter of hours and then disappeared entirely. Even the wood furniture decayed faster than usual, breaking down in a matter of months. Every time it happened, Aaron and I would exchange a knowing glance, even as the children denied we'd even been grocery shopping the day before or that the dining room table had ever existed. I was afraid, of course. I wondered if I'd wake one morning to find myself missing a limb or one of the children gone. Aaron tried to reassure me. Living things were unaffected. He and I were healthier than ever. Even our preschooler, Grace, barely ever got sick. Our older boy, Derek, was healthy as a horse and acing second grade. Even our white lab, King, seemed extra sprightly, though he was getting on in years. "We should leave," I told Aaron. "We don't know what it's capable of. It's clearly some kind of curse. Who knows when it'll come for us?" "You're probably right," he said. He was always trying to make me happy. And so for a while, we diligently watched Zillow for other houses. This was during the tail end of COVID, though, and we'd bought the dip. Everything was getting more expensive, especially when you factored in the new interest rates. Every day, a move felt farther away. And then King died. We should have seen it coming. He'd been a step slow on his walks, and he hadn't pooped in 2 or 3 days. Finally, he made some kind of retching sound that woke us up in the middle of the night. We went downstairs to find him dead in the middle of the living room. "We'll take care of it in the morning," Aaron told me, hugging me close. King had been mine even before we got married. I held him one last time, saying goodbye. By the time we woke the next day, he was gone. Grace and Derek ran around the yard happily as Aaron made pancakes, and I looked out at the ocean with a 1,000-yard state. After a few minutes, Derek ran up to me and handed me a chew toy. "Look," he said. "One of the neighbor's dogs must have left this in our yard. There's a bunch of them." "It's not good," I told Aaron that night. "It's not right." "Maybe it's for the best," he said. "They're happy. Because they don't remember they ever had a dog. They loved King. Now that's just gone." Aaron rolled his eyes. "Not all pain is good pain," he said. "Maybe some things are better left forgotten." I thought back to my own girlhood, when I'd lost Priscilla, my beloved black cat. A neighbor's Rottweiler had wrung the life out of her. It was the first time something I'd loved had died. For a few weeks after, I didn't fully understand. I still thought she'd come curl up with me as I went to sleep once she was better. And then finally, it dawned on me that there would be no better, that some things really could be lost forever. "Losing a pet is one of those childhood touchstones," I said. "Something you look back as what defines you. It leaves a scar. We're more interesting with scars." "I love you," said Aaron, "and all of your scars. But no one goes out looking to get one on purpose. If we can protect the kids, we should. Right?" "Right," I said, curling up next to him, too tired to argue. "Who owned the place before you?" asked my sister Amy one day when I had her over for a glass of wine. I had told her everything, but when I tried to offer proof by leaving a small spill of wine on the ground, it didn't disappear. The house liked to keep its secrets. Amu had a little boy named Carter, a second grader just like Derek, and while we sipped our Chardonnay, we watched the two of them running in the grass, occasionally wailing on each other with foam swords. "Some old lady sold it to us," I said. "No family. She was downsizing." "Huh," she said. "Isn't downsizing for people whose kids go off to college? Sounds like she never had a family to begin with." I thought about that for a few seconds. Now that Amy mentioned it, it did seem strange that the seller had called it downsizing. I was about to follow up when we got interrupted breaking up a fight, and by the time we got back to socializing, I'd completely forgotten our train of conversation. "Do you think the house messes with the taste of the wine?" I asked. "Like, does it taste more like vinegar to you?" I don't mind a little age, she said. Plus, I think you're fucking crazy anyway. I knew you wouldn't believe me, I said. Oh no, I totally believe you about the house, she said. I just also happen to think you're fucking crazy. After Amy left, I remembered her offhand comment about the previous owner, and I got to thinking. What if the woman did have a family at some point? And what if they died in the house? Would they also have been erased? Did the woman even remember? I couldn't sleep as the questions bounced around my mind, until finally I got up and headed down to the kitchen. I tried to find a slice of cake from earlier in the fridge, but it was long gone, paper plate and all. The kitchen was amazingly sterile. Little spills of milk or juice disappeared almost right away. Crumbs, too. You probably could have done surgery on the counter. Then I headed to my office and dug up the previous owner's information. She was named Pamela Chung, and she'd owned the house for over 50 years, living there all by herself. Not knowing quite what to say, I drafted a quick email, asking if she'd be available to grab coffee and talk over some of the house's quirks. Since it was around 3 in the morning, I wasn't expecting a reply for a few hours, days maybe. But Pamela wrote back right away, inviting me to her new apartment the next morning. Pamela's apartment was kind of a wreck. It wasn't like something out of Hoarders exactly, but there were plenty of dirty dishes scattered around on bookshelves and end tables, and the whole place smelled vaguely of soup. You'll have to excuse my housekeeping, Pamela apologized as I swept some crumbs to the side before sitting on the couch. I'm afraid 50 years in that house spoiled me as a cleaner. I do make an excellent cup of coffee, though. Interested? I nodded, and she headed to the kitchen. There was something oddly comforting about the untidiness of the place. I realized it had been months since I'd cleaned a wet ring from a coffee table or even washed a towel. There was just no need. A few minutes later, she came back and handed me the coffee, which was as delicious as advertised. There's something about the way that house affects the beans, isn't there? She said, sipping a mug of her own. It's the little things that you don't realize. So, you experienced some unusual properties in the house? I asked. Well, of course, she said. That house is hungry, not necessarily in a bad way, not to my thinking. Just like any other tool, it all comes down to how you use it. She sipped her coffee, assessing me. Tell me, she said. Are you and your husband both on the deed? Of course, I say. Good for you, she said. A true partnership. You see, in my case, I came from money. My family never trusted my husband. I was the only one who officially owned the house. I was the only one who remembered. The realtor said you didn't have a husband, I said. She said you didn't have a family. Oh, that's just how the world remembers it, said Pamela. The only truth is right up in here. She tapped her head with a bony finger. I had children too, beautiful children. But that's all gone now. The house erased them too. But I don't mind. It makes the memory more special, don't you think? That it's only mine. I left the meeting with Pamela shaken, but at least I knew I wasn't crazy. The house genuinely ate the dead. I was just thinking through the full implications of what it all meant when I got the call from Amy. She was hysterical. What is it? I asked over and over, hoping she would calm down. But I almost didn't want to. Amy wasn't the type to fall to pieces over minor shit. If she was sobbing on the other end of the line, there could only be one explanation. It's Carter, she finally said. He walking home from school, crossing the street. He must not have been looking. They said it was instant. He didn't feel any pain. Carter had been Amy's life. She'd been a single mom for almost half a decade at that point, and everything she did was built around him. Aaron and I tried to support her as she dealt with all of the arrangements, funeral, contacting relatives, arranging the cremation. But we couldn't be there for her at night when things got dark. She was drinking hard now. The fun Chardonnay happy hour replaced with a 24/7 bottle of something harder always at her side. She watched TV like a zombie, barely able to pull herself off the couch to use the bathroom. All the while, Carter's urn stood watching her from the mantel, his name etched on the side, a constant reminder of his absence. And worst of all, there was nothing I could really say. Because how else would you expect her to react? The one light in her life had been snuffed. She's just going to keep drinking until she dies, I said. and there's nothing I can do. Aaron held me close. Unless, he started. Unless what? Come on, he said. Don't tell me you haven't thought about it. It could be just like King. Remember how happy the kids were the day after he died? We're not erasing Carter, I said. Fine, he said. But if we don't, we might be cremating your sister next. I cut myself shaving that night. I watched as the drops of blood trickled down my leg and dripped onto the shower floor. They disappeared before they even reached the drain. I imagined dying in this house, the speed at which my body would decay and disappear. I thought of my children playing happily in the morning, oblivious to the fact that they'd ever had a mother. And for the first time, I truly began to fear the house. Yes, it was a tool, just as Pamela had said, but it was a dangerous one, offering the potential for a kind of erasure worse than death. And I found myself shaking, despite the hot water all around me, praying I'd die somewhere far from that house. But despite it all, I wasn't ready to leave, just yet. There was still a use for this tool, no matter how dangerous. Get up, I told Amy a few days later. I know you don't want to, but you have to. No, she said weakly, her eyes never leaving the TV. I'm serious, I said. You need some fucking daylight. It's starting to stink in here. You're never going to feel better if you just keep doing this. Why would I want to feel better? She asked, an edge in her voice. Why would I possibly want that? You're right, I said, tears springing to my eyes. You're right. After she passed out that night, I tucked her under a blanket and grabbed Carter's urn as I left her house. Back at home, Aaron hugged me when he saw me walk in, urn in hand. You're doing the right thing, he said. You're saving her. There were certain places in the house where it seemed to eat things quicker. We called them hot spots. The kitchen was one, the bathroom was another. But nothing beat the basement. Anything down there tended to disappear in minutes. We'd once seen it devour a pizza in less than half an hour. I took Carter's urn down there and gave it a quick kiss. Then I set it down. I spent the next hour watching the smudges on the urn slowly disappearing, the fingerprints being erased. Then, there was a quiet sound emanating from the jar, almost like sandpaper rubbing slowly against wood. Then, finally, the metal itself seemed to grow fuzzy in my vision, like I'd squinted my eyes. And when I opened them, I realized the engraving had disappeared. Carter's name was gone. I walked over and picked up the urn, only to find it lighter than before. Inside, it was empty. The next morning, I woke to find Amy at my door in jogging clothes. She was beaming ear to ear. What's going on? I asked. I woke up with the mother of all hangovers and did the worst thing you can imagine. I weighed myself. When the hell did I gain 15 pounds? Well, meet the new healthy Amy. I'm done sitting around all alone feeling sorry for myself. I'm going to get out there and get what I want. That's great, I said. But what do you want? Isn't it obvious? She said, gesturing to my house. Great husband, great kids, awesome house. You're living the dream, sis, and I'm not going to rest until I am too. I realized I was crying and that I'd never be able to explain to her why. I wiped my tears away. You doing okay? She asked, suddenly worried. I'll be fine, I said, knowing it was a lie. I waved goodbye as I watched my teardrops disappear from the floor, down the house's throat,